What's up, guys? I know some of you have been waiting a while for this. My apologies. I'm not a YouTuber, so it's a little foreign to me. And it's probably not going to be as smooth as some of the other tutorials out there, but we'll get to it. All right, first things first, we've got this minimal 2D top-down engine scene. There's nothing in it beyond, the basic loaded 2D scene that comes with top-down engine. So the first thing that we want to add is we want to add some kind of dialog parent. So we got a dialog parent. We'll add a dialog parent to this. Think about dialog parents as kind of a collection of dialogues. So they all use the same trigger, they all have the same interface, and they all have the same parent ID. So, you know, this is one bundle of dialogues. All right, parent ID. The parent ID has to be unique. So for this one, we'll just name it parent1. All right. Um, this unique ID is used for saving, loading, to call it from other, dialogue scripts and things like that. Um, just remember it has to be unique. All right, interface prefab. This is what the dialogue's actually going to look like. So we're just going to use one of the ones that I've already created from before, and we'll just drag that onto it. This interface offset is how much of an offset the interface display is from the trigger. So I usually just do like a 1 or 2 above it, just that way the dialog pops up just a little bit above where the trigger is. All right, so let's create a trigger. For the trigger, we're just going to create an empty game object. We'll call it trigger. All right. What we want to do is we want to add a dialog trigger. This dialog trigger is actually just the top-down engine or Corgi engine trigger, and it's just a custom version of it. The only thing that really changes is it has this trigger dialog node, so you can trigger an exact dialog node from this dialog parent. There's a couple of behind the scenes things as well, but all these settings are going to be the same as the top down engine or Corgi trigger. So if you need to know what any of those are, you can just look on the documentation that he has for that. All right. For us, there's just a couple basic things that you'll probably want to set in it for your basic, dialogue prompt. We definitely want to use a visual prompt. I've included this button prompt in the dialogue module. This button prompt is just an exact copy of the button prompt that he uses in Top Down Engine and Corgi. So you can change that or mess around with it however you want, but it's just the same. I just moved it here for easy access. All right. Always show prompt. We want to remove that because we only want it to show when we're colliding with it. And then we want to hide it after use. And the reason we want to do that is just that way, once we start the dialogue, we don't need to see that prompt anymore. We're not going to mess with the trigger dialog node right this second. We'll come back to that in a little bit and show you how that works. All right, for this dialog trigger to work, it's the same as the top-down or Corgi one. You have to add some kind of collider. So we're just going to do a circle collider 2D for this, and we'll set it to 2. Make sure it's set to is trigger, otherwise it won't fire. And then just so we can see what this is, we're going to just add a little circle to it, and we'll set the sorting layer to characters just that way it shows up on the map. And all I'm going to do now is just copy this transform, just that way my trigger is actually in the scene. Then as you can see, now it's in the scene, so we'll just drag it over here just that way it's nice and easy in the scene for us to see. All right, that's pretty much it for the triggers. And now we just want to drag this trigger straight onto here. All right, starting child. If you set a starting child, it'll automatically pull whatever child you have under this parent into here. So let's say we'll add a bark. This bark comes under here. We'll name it bark 1 or bark 1. Now under dialog parent, if we want that bark 1 to always start when this is triggered, we'll just add this to the start. The only time this won't start when it's triggered is if this bark is set to Alright, sorry about that. Alright, I had to add back this run once. It was hidden with this custom inspector that I've been creating for all the dialogues that had this little fancy copy ID for convenience. So the only time that this start child won't actually call it is if it's set to run once, and this is already run once. At that point, the start child, it'll just pull the next one in the list, if that makes sense. Even if you do random, so if we set random, it's going to ignore that start child, and as you can see, it just kind of hides it, so that way that's not needed. Alright, so we're just going to do this bark just to show you how it works. So we'll add 2. We'll say an orange circle isn't that awesome. Maybe I can spell correctly. Alright, so now we just have this random bark, it just calls it. It's set as the starting child. So now if we hit play and we run over here, we select it, I'm an orange circle, isn't that awesome? It goes away and then it pops back up because it's not run once, so we can run that as many times as we want. Alright. So let's say that this isn't set. So no, it's not set. And we'll just maximize this on play just that way you can see it a little bit better. Alright, so now if we run over there, it's still going to pull that 1 because it's the only one we have. Alright, but let's say we add another bark. And this one's going to be bark 2. Sentences, we'll do 3. We'll say run faster. Go away. Alright, so now we have the 2 dialogues. If we hit play, I'm an orange circle, isn't that awesome? I'm an orange circle, isn't that awesome? So what it's doing right now, since this isn't set for run once, and it's not set for random, it's only going to play this until you manually tell it to play something else. That's where this trigger would come in. So we've got this bark 2. Let's say we have a separate trigger just for that second one. So what we would do is we would tell this in here, bark 2. That's the one we want to play. So now when we go over here, run faster, go away. So you can kind of see how that works, where if you want a specific bark with a certain trigger, you could have 3 triggers and then just one dialogue parent, but each trigger could trigger a different dialogue on that dialogue parent. The other thing you could do is you could just hit random, and now when we go there, it'll just randomly play one of these barks. So I'm an orange circle, isn't that awesome? And sometimes it takes a little bit, just, there it goes. Since it's random, it could play 10 of those before it plays the second one, but that's just the thing when you only have 2 of them. It doesn't have a lot to choose from. Alright, now that we've kind of gone over barks, they're super simple. Let's say we want this to run once, and we take this off of random. So now we know that it's going to play this one first, but it's only going to run it once. So then what it's going to do is it's going to run this one second. This is a good way if you're doing like a tutorial scene and you want, them to hit different things, and then come back, and then it just automatically moves to the next one. And then since that one's not set for run once, it'll just now only play this one. But let's say we have that one set for run once as well. Alright, so we run over, play that one, and we play this one. And as you can see, there's no more pop-up. And, you know, if we come back and go away, there's no pop-up because both of them have been set for run once. So once these two run and this dialog parent is now out of children to play, it disables this trigger. So this trigger is no longer active in the scene. The sprite or whatever it's attached to is still active. It's just, it pretty much makes this dialog trigger, you know, unactivatable, and it doesn't show the prompt for it. Alright, so let's go back here. Since we're done with these, we're going to disable both of these. And as you can see, the dialog parent here, oops, sorry. We want to leave that part. We want to disable the actual game object for it. Alright, and as you can see, once you disable these game objects, it actually pulls it out of this active dialog children list, just as a kind of a convenience feature. Alright, let's move to conversations. So conversations work, they can work just like barks, and we'll do that first. We'll show you how this works as a bark. So let's do convo 1. Begin conditions. So this would be any conditions that you want to have happened before, you know, this conversation can start. Begin actions. So let's make, we'll create an empty, and we'll call this begin actions. And we'll add dialogue actions. All right, let's just do something simple. So we'll do a feedback actions. So now we need to add feedback. And the feedback, we'll just do something simple. Let's do a camera flash. All right, so we'll drag this feedbacks here. All right, now we've got this dialogue action that flashes the screen, and we'll just add that to the begin actions. And we'll create a sentence. Let's just do 1. And it'll just say, hey there. Oops. Hey there. It just crashed. Alright, so currently there's no response on this. You know, we're just going to run it just like if it were a bark, but with an action attached to it. So barks have no actions, no conditions. Convos have conditions and actions. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a second and show you how you make it into an actual conversation. So now we go over, see the screen flashed, and then, you know, he says that. Now, you can notice that any subsequent time when we go to this, it doesn't flash. And the reason for that is these begin conditions only fire when this conversation starts for the very first time. So that way, you know, let's say you have it, you know, you want something to happen that very first time that they start a conversation. That's where this begin action is. These in actions, so let's say we put end actions. So now at the end of the conversation, those end actions, you know, flash, and then another flash. No flash, no flash. So the end actions work in the same exact manner. It only does it that, you know, initial first end. And you'll see the reason behind that in a second, because, you know, these conversations are meant to be grouped. So you'll have one, and then what you'll do is you'll create another convo, and we'll actually have this conversation, you know, move on to this conversation. And you wouldn't want to come back to this conversation and then start again. So that's why, you know, it only does it on the beginning of it and the end of it. So we'll call this convo 2. Begin conditions. This is where if you have this set for random, you need to make sure that this second conversation and this conversation, you want to create these conditions now. So we'll do create empty. We'll call this one conditions, and we'll add dialog condition to it. All right, and I'm just gonna duplicate this and drag it here, just that way I don't have to recreate that again. All right, and for this condition, we want to do a dialog state condition. So we only want to go to this first conversation right here if this conversation hasn't been started already. So what we'll do is we will say in this dialog state condition, we'll go to the parent ID, which is here. So we'll just copy that parent ID. All right, and the child ID, we'll just go here, and it'll be this child ID. And we only want to play this if it has not been started. So we want to make sure that this conversation has not been started for us to be able to start this conversation. So we'll add these conditions right here. And now this will only start if it's not already been started before. All right, now we'll move to this one, and we want this one not to show up unless it has been. So we'll go to the same thing, and we'll actually just do this, a nice little copy, and then paste it in there. All right, so we only want to do this one if it has started. So now the conversation has started. So now this one's actually, able to be run. And that way it'll just keep this dialog parent from going to this one if it's, set to random. All right, so in this, let's say we have this conversation, hey, did you just see that flash? Now let's add your side or the player's side of text to this conversation. So what we'll do is we will go here and we'll create an empty, and we'll call this choice 1. All right, and we'll just duplicate that because we're going to do a dialog choice on it, and we'll add another dialog choice on this. We'll rename this to choice 2. All right, so choice 1. We're going to say yes, we saw the flash. The choice button, this is the button ID that Corgi uses, or the Top Gun engine uses. So the basic ones are that jump, run, dash. So we're going to do jump. The choice conditions, we will use, so we'll add a new object to this, and we'll add a dialog conditions. All right, so the conditions for this, to be able to see this choice, is there really doesn't need to be any conditions because you either saw it or you didn't. So let's not even worry about that. But what we will do is we'll add a game object, and we'll add the actions. So yes, we saw it. Well, what do we want to do if we did see it? Well, we want to tell this dialogue right here to move to this next dialogue. So we will do start dialogue child action, and we'll actually just go straight to this combo 2. So what we're going to do is tell this dialogue that we're now moving to this one. So we'll set it to 2. Now let's do this. We'll put these choice actions. This choice button icon is just the icon for this, so we'll just go with the basic A. All right, now choice 2, we want to say no. We'll make this one dash. There's no dialog conditions or anything like that, and we'll just give it the B button. So with this one, since it has no actions or conditions, it'll show up, but once you click it, it'll just close out this conversation. Now for this one, and like I said, these conditions, we actually want to make sure that before this one started, we'll actually make this completed. So we'll make this conversation right here completed before this one is available. And that way what we can do is in choice 2 down here, we'll actually add a new action and we'll do dialog state action. And we'll do the parent ID, which is that parent 1 up here. So copy. So that parent 1 and convo 1. So, the current conversation we're in. And what we're going to do is we're just going to set that as completed. So now this conversation has been completed by hitting yes. We complete this conversation. We complete this conversation, and then we jump to the second conversation, which is right here. This one, we'll just say, we'll do 1, and we'll say, isn't that awesome? All right, and the conditions for this is we just want to make sure that that one's completed. All right, so let's test this out. And we go over, hey, did you just see that flash? And I'll just hit yes. Isn't that awesome? And obviously that's something I need to fix where it pops up like that. So what we can do is, so in this dialog parent script, we'll edit this script. And there's a spot in here where I actually reset the dialogue. So when the dialogue ends, I reset these triggers. And what I can do, alright, so what I did, I just added a cancel reset here. And pretty much what it does is, it just stops the coroutine of showing that prompt when the user's done with the thing. So now if we go back to this, and we'll just test it out real quick just to make sure. We go over, we hit, there's the flash. Did I see a flash? Yes, I saw the flash. Isn't that awesome? And there we go, now it pops back up when it's supposed to. And then again, he just goes back to that, is that awesome? Because the first one, this one, has been completed. So it's not going to show this one anymore since it's been completed. So he's just going to say that. All right, so that's pretty much how you do these conversations back and forth. You use the choices for your player response, and then you use these actions to kind of set what happens, whether you want to move to a different conversation, whether you want to complete the previous one, whether you want to, any of these actions you could do, empty inventory, you could do any of these, but, however you wanted to do it, that's kind of how it's broken down, into these actions, selections. And I guess I can just go through these actions real quick, just so that we can kind of know. So these the distance tracker and kill tracker, these are more quest style actions. Camera look action, we'll just add one. This will just look at a target. So when you start to talk to somebody, you can set this and it'll actually, move the camera, pan the camera to that, and then it'll pan it back after that amount of time. So that's what that one does. Let's see, this custom action just allows you to, use unities. You can do whatever you want. So you could create new scripts and then just, run it as a custom action. You've got these dialog state actions, which are up here. It pretty much just sets the state of a dialog node or a dialog child. You've got empty inventory. And what this does is it'll actually, you can select which inventory from top down or corgi, and you can just empty that, this player's inventory. So, that's good for like your Fable style, boasts where you talk to somebody and he says, hey, do you think you can complete this dungeon without your inventory? And if you hit yes, then what you could do is you could run this empty inventory, and it'll empty the player's inventory and then continue with the dialogue. So that's kind of what that's used for. Let's see, you've got this feedback, which we already did, just kind of shows a flash. Remove item is, you put an item name and the amount that you want to remove. That's pretty self-explanatory. This start dialogue child action is what we used up here, and it pretty much just will start the conversation. So once you select this, it'll close the current convo and then move on to the convo that you provide. Tracker status, that's more of a quest thing, and we'll go over that when we do a quest. This use item. So this one, instead of removing the item, this will actually consume the item or use it. So if you have like a health potion and you set this in there, this will actually use the health potion and you'll see the effects of whatever item it uses. Whereas remove, you won't see any effects. It just removes it from your inventory. Kind of like if the character were to take it from you, versus this one, the character's forcing you to use that item. So now that we got that, we'll go ahead and close these ones down. All right. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a quest. So these quests, they work a little bit differently from the conversations because you have a pre-start, which this is before you've started the quest. So this would be where you put the question of, and we'll just do, can you run 5 miles? And we'll just have this ask the player if they can run 5 miles. We will create empty. This one's going to be a dialogue choice. Dialogue choices are always going to be responses to the dialogue child. They work in hierarchy form, so you don't have to add it to this dialogue child. As long as it's under it in the hierarchy, it will automatically get attached to this. So we just make sure that it's underneath it in the hierarchy. And what we'll do is we'll make the choice test and we'll say yes. So we'll accept it. Yes, we can run. We'll make it jump. We'll add just the button, so the A button. Now with this quest, we need to tell it that we've actually started it. So what we'll do is we have these choice actions, so let's add an action. So add a dialogue choice action, and what this action will do is it'll actually do a dialogue state action, because we want to change the state of this quest to say that we've started it. So we'll do started. We'll grab the child name, which we need to name, so quest 1. So quest 1, and this one is parent 1, and we saw that up there where it's just parent 1. Alright, so now with this action will do is it'll actually set this quest as started. So when we select yes, I can run, it'll run these actions, which will then set this quest as started. Alright, once the quest is started, these are the sentences that will be run then. So on this, we want to say, have you run 5 miles yet? So we'll just check in and see if you've run that yet. Well, currently there's no conditions on this, so if once you set this to started, we no longer want this yes script to pop up. So we'll add a condition here. So let's add create empty. We'll add a condition and dialogue condition, and we will do the dialogue state condition. And again, it'll be parent 1, and it'll be quest 1. And we don't want that yes to run unless it's not started. So that way this yes only runs when we haven't started the quest. Because if we've already started it, then we don't need to say, that we're going to do it again. So, and we'll just copy this, and this one will be choice no, and this will be choice yes. So this choice no, we'll say no. And we'll make this dash. We'll make this button B. And we don't need any dialogue actions for this, or conditions, because this is just going to end the conversation. If you wanted him to say, something else, or you wanted to go to a different conversation, you could always change this to have an action that points to, a different conversation or something along those lines. But for this, we'll just say, no, we're not ready to accept this quest, so we're not going to start it. And then maybe if we come back later, we'll accept it. So we'll say, choice actions or conditions, no, choice, no. Well, we also don't want this, I guess we do need a condition on this, so let's add a condition. I guess we do want the condition to make sure that, let's say we move to this start, we don't want this choice no to, we don't want no to show up if we've already started it. So we'll add the condition as dialog state condition, parent 1, quest 1, and we'll only do this again if it's not started. So both of these will have the same condition of, we haven't started the quest yet. And we'll make sure that we drag this condition onto here and make sure that our conditions are dragged onto here. Alright, so now our conditions are set, our actions are set, our choice. Alright, all of that's set. Now, once you've started the quest, this pre-start, so, alright, we've got the first action where we've set it to started, which is awesome, but now we need to actually do something. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this distance tracker. These tracker IDs are also unique. It's just like the child IDs and the parent IDs. It's used for saving, and it's used to be able to track it from other scripts and those other dialogues and such. So we'll call this distance 1. The distance from, we're just going to do it from the trigger, so that way the distance from that trigger. And the distance, we're going to say 5, because again, we wanted him to run 5 miles. So this will add a distance tracker. It'll actually add a tracker script to the dialog manager that will track the distance from the player from this trigger. Now we've got all of that. Perfect. Now let's say you've accepted and you come back to here, have you run 5 miles yet? Well, currently nothing's going to pop up because both of these are set for not started. So let's add, we'll create, delete, we want to add a new game object here, and this will be choice yes 2 and choice no 2. And I mean, you could do choice no as started, choice yes started. That way it's just a little bit easier to follow. Alright, again, we're going to add a dialog choice. We'll add a dialog choice. Started. So yes. We've run that far. Again, we'll do jump. We'll make this A. Alright, and on this one, we're just going to do no. For the choice button, we're going to use the same one because we can't have no and yes at the same time. Like, you either met the condition or you haven't. So we'll just use the same jump button. For choice actions on this one, we're not going to do anything. But for the conditions, we do want to add the condition that, we don't want this no started to show up unless the quest has actually been started. So we want to do parent 1 child, which is quest 1, And we want to make sure that it's actually been started before we show this. And we're just going to copy this. So that way when we come up here, well, I guess I could copy this whole thing. We'll just add it here. Alright, so conditions, we want to make sure that yes, it's started. And then for yes, we want to make sure that, again, it's started. And we'll just drag these conditions. Alright, now no, for him to be able to say, or we'll go to yes first. For him to be able to say yes under these conditions, we need to make sure that we track, we get that tracker and find out, if that tracker has been completed, because that's what's tracking this quest. So we'll go to the tracker ID of distance 1, and we'll see if it's complete. And we'll copy this, and we'll go down here, and we want to make sure that no is only called if it's not complete. Because if it's not complete, then we want them to say no. If it is complete, then we want them to say yes. If it is complete, yes, and we've clicked on yes, now we need to add an action, so that way something happens when we click yes. So we'll create an empty. We'll add an action to it, and under this action what we'll do is we'll add, we will do a dialog state action, and it's parent1 quest 1, and what we're going to do is we're going to set it to complete, because now you've said yes that you've done it, so now this quest has been completed. So what happens when he completes? Well, we want to say something, so we'll go to, yay, you are awesome. So now he says that you are awesome, and you could add actions in here if you wanted, so things happen once it's been complete, or you could add conditions in here. So instead of doing this yes choice, here it's more like RPG style, where you come back from the quest and you say, oh, have you done this for me, and your character has to say yes. If you don't prefer that style and you want the quest to automatically move to the next step, then you would just move all of these conditions right here. You would just put those conditions here. And that way, when you come back, he wouldn't even ask you if you've completed it. He would just go straight to this and say, yay, you are awesome. And then do whatever actions are the complete actions. So in this one, we're gonna do it this way, where you come back and say yes. It checks the conditions, and then it does this action. So the action, it just sets it for complete. Well, let's go ahead and make him automatically congratulate you after you say yes. So to do that, we'll just do this start dialog child action. So this is just going to, again, start this dialog child, and we're just going to start that same one. So we'll just start quest 1, because now that it's completed, the state is set to complete, we're going to automatically go to this. So now we just have that set where it'll set it for complete, and then it'll just come back to this, and then it'll run that complete sentence. Alright, so now let's test this out. So we run over, hey, can you run 5 miles? Yeah, we can do that. Now if I talk to him again, have you run 5 miles yet? No. So we can see that that condition is set for, to check whether he's run 5 miles. You haven't, so no. Alright. So you run away, come back. Hey, we've run 5 miles. So now we talk to him, have you run 5 miles yet? Yes. So you can see that tracker, status has changed to yes. So now it shows yes in there. We hit it, and it automatically pops up with that congratulate, yeah, you are awesome. Then if you leave and come back, it's just going to keep saying yeah, you're awesome, because that dialogue has been set to complete. Alright, now I'll show you guys kind of how these actions work, well, the trackers work. So with this distance tracker, and I'll pull it up. It pretty much, when it starts, so we've got that add tracker, which all this does is it takes the dialog manager and it adds that distance tracker, and then it fills in the information that is needed. And I'll show you guys what with these distance tracker. So let's go back to this distance tracker. So this inherits from a dialog tracker, and we'll just go to this real quick. This dialog tracker has some set an object condition, so the game object. So in this distance tracker, that object is the object condition transform position, which if you look at this add distance tracker, it's being set, that object is being set to this distance from. And the reason I do it that way is just that way you can create your own trackers, and they can be saved without you having to add a bunch of things in there, because it's going to load this data and save this data, and it just loads those conditions. Now let's go back to this distance tracker. So now that we've got that, we just run an update loop on the distance, and we check that object condition, which is that trigger that we set, and against the player transform position. And if the distance is greater than the int condition, which that int condition is the distance that we set, and then we set that status to complete. Well, let's say what if we want this to fail if you've gone too far? Then we could say if distance is greater than 500, let's say you ran 500, then we could come back and say status equals, and we would just set that tracker status to failed. And now you've gone way too far, so that status has failed, and it's no longer complete. So that's just one thing that you could do. But these trackers are made to allow you to create any kind of tracker you could think of, and it just automatically uses this base class of dialog tracker with these already set conditions. You've got an object condition, a string condition, an int condition, then progress. And progress I'll show you with this kill tracker. So let's go to trackers, kill tracker. So this kill tracker, it just progresses. So that's for something like enemies, if you need to kill 30 of them. And I'll add it to this real quick. So let's say so we want to add that as an action. So action, like up here. Yeah, so where this distance one is, let's say that we do a kill tracker. We would call it kill, we would name it ninja, so whatever the game object name is, and then the amount. So let's say we wanted 5. Well, for it to save this, it needs to keep track of the amount that you've killed. And it does that through that progress, and that progress is constantly saved. And that just allows you to keep track of progress. So, I mean, you could do all kinds of things with that, with the trackers, creating trackers and progress and those kind of things. All right, back to this. So now that we've got this quest, we've got a quest, we've got these combos, everything is set under this dialog parent. You could set it to random and turn all these back on. So now it's set to random, and let's hit play. Now what it'll do is it'll just randomly, so I've already made one mistake. So on this quest right here, where it says, which one was it playing? It was doing the, isn't that awesome? Yeah. Because we don't have this condition dragged on here. I forgot to drag it on there. And that condition pretty much just made sure that this was completed first. So I mean, it's just something to make sure that you actually drag those conditions once you create it on there. So what it's doing now is, so it's run that, but yeah, I could run that. So why it failed right there is because I need to fix this bug where if a condition, so it's trying to pull this conversation, but the condition doesn't meet, so it's just failing the condition. So I need to fix that real quick so that way that doesn't happen. Alright, so what I did for this, just to prevent it from trying to load dialogues that conditions aren't passed, I added this only in random. Everything else, it should only be called if you actually call that child. It's just random you have to worry about. So in random, we're pretty much just grabbing the list of these children's. We grab a random key, and then we check to see if we can start that child. If we can't start that child, then we just call this again, and it'll run through this random again until it gets one that it passes the conditions. So just a simple fix there. But now in here, we've got this, random, all of these listed, and we'll just make sure that, we don't get that one where, it's calling. So run, that one's good. Run. Hey there, just see a flash. Can you run 5 miles? Run. So as you can see, we're not getting that one that we were getting before that was part of the second conversation because that condition is not being met on the. So there we go. All right. And that is all there is to it. I mean, like I said, if you can think of anything that needs to be added or taken away or something you want me to clarify a little bit more, just let me know. My goal right now is adding a bunch more of these trackers so you don't have to add them yourself, and adding more conditions again so you don't have to add them yourself. And then the last thing that I'm working on before it hits release is I'm making a way for you to be able to take these dialogue parents and actually export them. So you could just take this dialogue parent and export, and what it'll do is it'll export it into a JSON of just this parent, and it'll include all the options and strings and settings and stuff, and that way you can export it and then import them right back into this dialogue parent. And that's the last thing that I'll be working on before I release this as a an actual full release, not just a beta. Alright, I hope you guys were able to follow along with this tutorial. I hope I wasn't going too fast or too slow, and I hope I hit on everything that you needed to know. Alright, appreciate it.